Tonight on The Rational, a Montreal lawyer shows you how to dodge potholes. Immigration caregivers fight back. A second chance for unwanted Montreal dogs.
Good evening and welcome to The Rational. I'm Rose Sneed. The city of Montreal is filling potholes this month, but there is still plenty to watch out for. If your car is damaged by one, you may be able to get the city to foot the bill. Samantha Rideout has more.
It's a familiar sight in Montreal this time of year. Cars struggling to dodge large potholes left behind by the spring thaw. Hitting a pothole can mean big repairs for your car, and that can get expensive.
If you ruin a tire, it's going to be around $150 to change a tire. If you need a rim, it's around $60 or so. And then there's a spring that goes up to hundreds of dollars. So you hit a pothole, you have a very bad day.
Driver Michel Faure blew out 3 tires on 3 different potholes this year. He blames the city for the bad roads.
There's nothing you can do because there's a car on your right, a car on your left, a car behind you. You're going 50, 60 kilometers an hour. There's nothing you can do.
A provincial law says you can't claim compensation from the city if your car is damaged by a pothole. But a Montreal lawyer says there is a way to get your money back. Jordan Charnes says the key to claiming damages is finding out whether the pothole has already been reported.
So the judges have said that if the city knew about the pothole because somebody had warned them and didn't do anything about it within a reasonable time, and it was a serious kind of pothole, then notwithstanding the law, they're still going to allow you to collect for the damage caused to your car.
Drivers can report a pothole or check the status of one by calling the city's 311 hotline. I called 311 to check on this pothole at the corner of René Lévesque and Drummond. It didn't take long for the city to check their database and tell me the status of this particular pothole, which was that I was the first person to have reported it. Charnas said over a dozen Montrealers have already got the city to pay for their repair bills. But if you would like to follow suit, then don't delay. Drivers have only 15 days after the accident to file a claim against the city. For Concordia News, I'm Samantha Rideout.
On to international news. It's been more than 2 months since a terrific magnitude 7 earthquake struck Haiti, killing 220,000. But the crisis is ongoing. The disaster left more than 1 million Haitians homeless, and the reconstruction of this poor island nation is an arduous process. Last Wednesday, international donors met to discuss Haiti's future and to arrange tens of billions of dollars in funding. During the disaster, we heard horrific stories coming from Haiti, but few can imagine what it was like firsthand. Peter Brawl brings us more.
Gazette reporter Sue Montgomery was in Haiti for 2 weeks following the earthquake. But back in Canada, she's been helping Haitian immigrants find homes and enlightening Canadians about her experience. I asked her about being a reporter in one of the most chaotic situations imaginable.
Many times I put down my notebook and held up IV bags and helped deliver babies, helped stitch up people. And then at the end of the day I would go home and to the house, to the Haitian family I was living with, and write my stories. I didn't want to leave, and I told the Gazette that, but they insisted that I come out and get a rest.
But despite the difficulties, Montgomery continues to fight for Haiti. She says Canada and Quebec are thinking about Haiti in the wrong terms.
I just find it kind of arrogant of us to think that, well, if they come here, they're never going to leave, because it's so great here. I don't believe that. Like, everybody wants to live in their own country. I think every refugee that comes here would love to go back to their own country if they could.
Peter Brawl, Concordia News, Montreal.
Back home, the Federal Live-In Caregiver Program was modified on April 1st. Most of the expenses originally incurred by caregivers will now fall on the employers. This includes airfares and the approximately $4,000 charged by recruiting agencies. According to Evelyn Caligay, chairperson of PINE, this change won't be enough to improve the living conditions of Filipino workers.
At least don't put in the name of the employer on their permits.
She says the changes still don't fix the biggest problem. That is that the caregivers can only work for one employer. Here with more is Antoine Dion Ortega. So Antoine, could you explain more fully what this change in policy means?
Well, Rose, the goal of these changes is to make life easier for the live-in caregivers who come to Canada, especially by removing the recruitment agency fees.
But could you tell us, why did these nannies need a recruitment agency in the first place?
Well, that's because under the federal live-in caregiver program, foreigners who want to come to Canada to work as live-in nannies need to find their employer prior to their departure. So unless they already know someone here, which is unlikely to happen, they will turn to a recruitment agency that will help them to find their employer. These agencies can charge up to $5,000 for their services, and then the caregiver has to pay for an airfare, for health care insurance, and so on. So this is what has changed. From April 1st, all these expenses will fall on the employer.
But don't you think that this might mean that employers will simply refuse to recruit nannies from this program?
Well, actually, this is what the agencies I contacted argue. They even say that the changes will kill their business. But what is most likely to happen, according to the lawyers I talk with, is that these changes simply won't be enforced at all, and that nothing will really change, in fact.
Thanks, Antoine.
Thanks, Rose.
Centropole Roulant is a Meals and Wheels community organisation that was founded and is run by young Montrealers. But as the school year comes to a close, they face a seasonal shortage, lack of volunteers. Vanmala Subramaniam has the story.
Squeezing grapefruits, mixing macaroni, and rolling dough for a pie. Preparing a wholesome meal like this is a daily ritual at Centropole Roulant. This organization cooks and delivers free meals to vulnerable members of the community. The problem is, these chefs are student volunteers, and most are about to leave for the summer. Patrick Skelly is the volunteer coordinator at Centropole Roulant.
We can't do our work without the help of volunteers.
Not only do volunteers cook over 100 meals a day, they deliver them in bags like these across the city. Montreal has one of the highest rates of isolation among the elderly in Canada. 1/3 of seniors in this city live alone and below the poverty line. Centropole Roulant delivers more than just a hearty meal. For many of these seniors, these volunteers are the only human contact they may get in a day. 91-year-old Lillian McChesney has been living in this apartment with her husband for over 60 years. Due to an illness, he's now hospitalized and she's left alone. She cherishes these daily visits.
Oh, lovely. Lovely. They're all so nice. There's not one that I'd ever say, they're so nice and friendly. And they're very lucky to have them.
It will be more difficult for Centropole Roulant to get meals to people like Lillian McChesney. It remains to be seen how the organization will cope with this seasonal shortage. I just spoke to volunteer coordinator Patrick Skelly. He says the lack of volunteers this summer season will not only affect the delivery of meals, but also the Securing Our Future campaign. Now, this campaign is an ongoing initiative to foster intergenerational activities in Montreal, particularly during the summer months. Patrick says this organization could use all the help they can get. Those interested in donating their time or money can contact Centropole Roulant at 514-284-9335. Back to you, Rose.
Thanks, Vanmala. Hundreds of Montrealers were left unemployed after last year's recession. Although 2010 has brought more jobs to the public, one Montrealer whipped up her own tasty plan and went into business herself. Eric Hatch has the story.
Every day, Jacqueline Stennett bakes a number of gourmet cakes for her growing clientele. Her kitchen is both head office and bakery for her home-based business, Mama J's Cakes. From key lime pie to sweet potato cheesecake, Stennett relies on her own creative palette to make a living.
I want to make sure that your experience in having a Mama J's Cakes gives you the total turnkey. When you taste it, I want you to have no words. I want you to be speechless and that you cannot speak because you're too busy enjoying a Mama J's Cake.
Although Stennett was laid off in early 2009, unemployment forced her to cook up a plan. She decided to follow her passion. And in a time of recession, the Business Development Bank of Canada recommends just that aspiring entrepreneurs follow their passion and focus their energy on starting up their businesses.
That's what the economy needs. It needs people to kind of go out there on a limb and to jumpstart themselves and then jumpstart the economy by then growth and being able to hire other individuals.
Since its launch last year, Mama J's Cakes has more than tripled in business. While Stennett is happy with the growth, she admits that running a home-based business comes with greater responsibility.
If I'm not making my money, it's on me because I'm the one that it's falling upon.
So what does Stennett recommend as a recipe for success?
Make sure that you have a market. Make sure that you love what you're doing to do what it is that you want to do as your business.
While starting a home-based business during a recession may seem risky, the payoff can be well worth it. In Stennett's case, she can have her cake and eat it too. Eric Hatch, Concordia News, Montreal.
From a young age, we're told not to judge a book by its cover. But this edict doesn't seem to extend to the animal world, where being adorable is a prerequisite for the family pet. In this piece, I look at a Montreal organisation that focuses our attention on this injustice.
Meet Charles, the world's worst dog, according to owner Fern Breslaw. Charles's past owners beat him with brooms and abandoned him at the SPCA. He languished there for months, until Fern took him in. Now her Underdog Club offers the same second chance to dogs all over Montreal. Fern uses glamour shots and their moving stories to promote dogs like Charles, whom nobody wants.
You know, I believe that when you put love into something, people feel it. And so these dogs that typically nobody gives a shit about have had all this energy and all this care put into them, and it shows, you know.
So far, around 80 dogs have found homes through the club. Fern's secret?
The thinking was, in many ways, if you can present these dogs in such a way where people understand that it takes someone special to want to save them, then in many ways it gives the consumer something that's motivating.
Conservative estimates are that hundreds of thousands of dogs are destroyed in shelters every year in Canada. And if a dog happens to be old, ugly or unpopular, then is even less likely to avoid this fate.
Gail is a volunteer at the Underdog Club. She coordinates animal rescues.
You know, the idea is to try to create awareness of the fact that people should be going to rescues to get their dog.
And she's adopted one of these unfortunates herself. Kefi was found wandering the eastern townships. His fur was matted, he had a double ear infection and a growth in the corner of his eye. But when Gail saw him, it was love at first sight.
I mean, I'd had a dog before, but I'd had to put him down after 15 years, and it was about a year since I'd done that. So I was open and looking, and he was on my first shift. There you go.
More on our animal friends. Stable master Leo Leonard has just sold the last of his horses from Griffintown's Horse Palace, one of the last stables in Montreal. He spoke to Amy Kingdon about a time when working horses were an important part of daily life in the city.
Kate the horse lives here at the Griffintown Horse Palace on Ottawa Street. Her owner, Judy Walden, visits every day to care for her, but she is the only horse staying here this winter. She is also one of the last working horses in Montreal. Until recently, an 83-year-old man named Leo Leonard ran the Horse Palace. Just this month, he sold the last of his horses and moved into an assisted living home across town. He remembers a time when it would have been hard to imagine a near-empty stable.
I think there must have been about 3,000 horses in Griffintown. When I got in the carriage business on Dominion Square, there was 62 carriages booked for the mountains. They're all gone down to nothing now.
Leonard acquired this stable in the mid-1980s, but by then he'd already had a long career working with horses. He remembers a time when horses worked in many sectors of Montreal's economy, from railroads to shipyards.
The CNR had all horses, CPR. The city of Montreal used them all to clean the snow all the time. And I still got one of them plows in the yard, but it's so old now, you know, it's all falling apart.
People can still see horses pulling calèches for tourists in the old town, but the era of industrial urban horses is becoming history, as men like Leonard retire and take their memories with them. For Concordia News, I'm Amy Kingdon.
Well, that's all we have time for this evening. Join us again tomorrow for another edition that's timely, informative, and, of course, rational. Good night.